Thank you, Kathy. I find many heroes and heroines in the Bible. When it comes to correcting an injustice, Esther, the queen of Shushan, rises to the top. Upon learning her people would be destroyed by a decree of her husband, the king, she found the strength to enter his chambers, seeking to change that decree, knowing that doing so could mean her death. How did she muster the inner strength to do it? She sent a message to her cousin Mordecai, asking him to assemble the Jewish community of Shushan and fast on her behalf. The book of Esther tells us that on the third day, she put on her royal apparel and entered the king's chambers. Can you imagine the fear and uncertainty she felt when Mordecai told her the power was in her hands? She was apart from her people, living in the palace. She knew she would put her own life at risk. She did not want to do it alone. With the community praying for her, she found strength. With the community fasting, she stood on their shoulders to face the mighty king. She drew power from their actions, and standing before the king, she was not alone. It was the people that gave her power. I have spent a lot of time in recent months thinking about power. Who has it? Who wants it? Who wants to keep it? And how do they do it? We often think elected officials have the power, and they forget that we, the people, elect them and grant them authority. There is a difference between authority and power. They have authority, but people, we have the power. And I think about how this relates to our work for justice. I know firsthand what it feels like having the power lifting you up from the community. I am sure many of you were at the Nehemiah Action when we were asking the CEO of Adam H. to allocate resources for mental health support in our community. It was tense. I stood there with my bread colleagues, responding and negotiating. Mr. Royer had us believing he was on our side, but he would not agree to what we were asking. It isn't easy thinking on your feet in front of 3,000 people. But as I looked out at you, my community, I took a deep breath. I slowed down and found the words that spoke to Mr. Royer's heart, because he saw you and because he knew my words were not my words, but they were your words. He allocated those funds for the clubhouse. This city would not have that clubhouse or those response teams without you and your power. I stood on your shoulders that day. That presence and power is impossible to harness on Zoom. On Zoom, we are separated into tiny boxes. I'm like a talking head right now in this dark box that's behind me. That's because I have my lights out. We have to scroll to see everyone's faces. And that's even if they have their cameras on. Power is not in these boxes. Power is in the electricity of a community gathered for justice. Can you imagine Dr. King walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, a handful of people in tow, holding up a cell phone with hundreds of people in tiny boxes? Would anyone have paid attention? The power of that moment was in the massive numbers of people who lined up with Dr. King to march that day. And we need to create that power at the action. Sitting once again with thousands of others, we will bring power to the work of justice. Dr. King taught power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. We in Bread come together so that we have the power to correct what stands against love in our community. We must demand justice, and we must correct anything that stands against love. This is our moment. We have a unique opportunity. The city has received $500 million in American Rescue Plan money. $500 million. In case you hadn't heard, there's a new police chief in town she seems willing to work with Bread. And Columbus has been named America's Opportunity City. But we must ask, opportunity for whom? It's going to be a challenging winter with heat costs rising. But let's turn up the heat on the mayor. Mayor Ginther needs to be with us in person on May 10th at the Celeste Center. He has the authority. We have the power. So let's start turning on that heat. We are asking all of you, Justice Ministry and Rotoref Tzedek members, to send the mayor a message. You can see it on your screen. It's in the packet you received tonight. We believe Columbus can be an opportunity city for all. Mr. Mayor, we want you to meet with Bread leaders in the next month to discuss how to make it happen. Mr. Mayor, meet us at the Nehemiah Action on May 10th. Mr. Mayor, you talk about change a lot, and you can be that champion of change. But if you do not respond to us, we will keep asking you until you say yes. Let's see some applause if you are with me. Let's see some thumbs up if you are with me. That's right. Let's turn those applause into letter writing with our little fingers on that computer. We are facing great challenges in our city. Last week, we had our 175th homicide of 2021. 175 homicides. That number matches the total from 2020. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel once said, "Some are guilty and all are responsible." Yes, some are guilty for causing the challenges of our city, but all are responsible for eliminating those challenges. Each of us and the people with whom we are connected are responsible for coming together to do the work to create the change that this city needs. When we gather together in May, this city will bear witness to our power. It is the power of love, implementing the demands of justice. And justice will be at its best when we correct everything that stands against love. Bread rises. We'll now hear from Noel Williams as we celebrate our ownership of this powerful organization.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good evening. The last time most of us were together was at the celebration. At the celebration, we received a list of things that we've won and how much those things cost. You can find it on page 3 in your packet. We learned that when you add up all of the millions of dollars that go towards solutions we've won, like the nearly $500,000 to reduce gun violence through the National Network for Safe Communities, the $3.5 million for cleaning up vacant housing, and much more. If you add all of these things together, we'll find that every dollar invested in Bread, $79 of public money is leveraged in the community. We should celebrate that. Later this evening, we're going to hear updates on some of the campaigns we've been working on. These things would not have happened without the hard work and dedication of our research committees, as well as the dedication of us, network members, to get people to the Nehemiah action and financially invest into this work. If you have invested in bread this year, you are part owner of this organization. Please wave your hand if you invested this year. That's a lot of hands. Thank you for all your investments. We're going to recognize the congregations you see listed in the program. Overall, we've raised just over $144,000 towards our goal of $160,000. Tonight, we want to take a moment to recognize some of our congregations that had at least 50% of their network members make a financial investment into the justice work that we do through bread. Let's show our appreciation in the chat or through your reactions. Congregations: St. Thomas More Newman Center, Immaculate Conception Catholic Church, Columbus Mennonite Church, Church of Christ on Genesee Avenue, Congregation Tavares Israel, New Beginnings Christian Center, Gethsemane Lutheran Church,
Well, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Drum roll. New Faith Baptist Church of Christ, Congregation Redeemer Lutheran, Karl Road Christian Church, St. Christopher Catholic Church, St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, Temple Beth Shalom. Let's show these congregations some love in the chat or through your reactions. But wait, there's more. We want to give special recognition to 2 congregations that raised more than $15,000. Drum roll. These congregations are Tavares Israel and First Unitarian Universalist. There's one more congregation that we have to recognize this year for raising more than $20,000 in the investment drive. Drum roll! The St. Thomas More Newman Center. Let's see some reaction for that accomplishment. Congratulations to all the congregations we recognize tonight. And thank you to everyone who has invested this year. We couldn't have done it. We couldn't do this work without your financial investment. If you haven't invested this year and would like to, there's still time. Talk to one of the leaders of your justice ministry network tonight during the caucus time. We want to see more congregations recognized next year for having at least 50% of your network members invest, so that more of us are part owners of this organization. Bread rises. Now, as we move into our updates for Bread's roadmap for change, we would like to celebrate Columbus City Schools for starting the school year by training all 108 safety and security officers in restorative practice. Our Juvenile Justice Committee has been pushing for this training so that all of our schools have a more proactive approach to discipline that focus on building relationships. Tonight, we're excited to hear a testimony from one of our network members who works as a safety and security officer for Columbus City Schools. I would like to invite Tracy Armstrong from Rhema Christian Center to share her experience from the International Institute of Restorative Practice Training this fall. Tracy?
My name is Tracy Armstrong, and I am the Student Safety Resource Coordinator at Buckeye Middle School. I have been a security officer in Columbus City Schools for 21 years. I like working with kids, and I choose to work in the schools so that kids could see police as helpful and not feared. Many of these kids come in with a lot of baggage, violence in the home, taking care of younger siblings, or the stress of living in neighborhoods with crime. Some students come to school without enough sleep, or they haven't eaten, so you just don't know what their home life is. All of these stresses often lead to outbursts, and back in the day, that too often resulted in suspensions. Since Columbus City Schools had us do restorative practices training, we are working to change the culture. And that starts with safety and security officers, because we are the first face the student sees when they get off the bus. This sets the tone for the day. After learning about restorative practices, we started to interact with the children differently. For example, if a student seems to be in a bad mood, we make sure to say, "Good morning." And if they don't respond, we've started following up with them during the day. I've asked a student if they're okay, and I could just tell that small connection and effort made a difference in their attitude. Everyone in my department loved the training we received at the start of the school year. One of the main emphasis of training is relationships are key. Before this training, there would be times when a student would have a crisis, but without that personal relationship, not all of the staff or security could help them through the situation. Sometimes those scenarios would be really serious, like a student trying to hurt themselves or other people. So it's crucial that all of the staff get on the same page and have the skills and support they need to best help the students. As a network member at Rhema Christian Center, I am proud that we work with the district to have more training. And I know that Bread will continue to push until every staff and the training and support they need to transform our schools. The key to changing our culture is building relationships. Thank you.
You're up, Pastor Leister.
Good evening. We're here to speak about the campaign called Families First and Housing Now. Thousands of families cannot afford most of the apartments in the city of Columbus. Mayor Andrew Ginther likes to call Columbus America's Opportunity City. Thousands of families are living in tents and cars, or homeless shelters, or couch surfing. People are still getting evicted. Kids don't have a place to lay their heads. Where's the opportunity for them? So we have to keep up our push for affordable housing for all income levels. There is money available right now that could help thousands of people who need an affordable place. So our housing campaign is asking for two things: more money and a plan. And we have made some progress. Back in 2019, after our members spent 3 months straight at every county commission meeting about their housing struggles, the commissioners finally did what we asked. That year, they came up with another $6.5 million for housing. That money has given hundreds of families a decent roof over their heads. But much more is needed: more money and a plan. As for the money, as we announced at the Nehemiah Action, Columbus and Franklin County will get almost $500 million for housing. $500 million from the federal government, from the American Rescue Plan. They've already gotten the first round of payments, and we want the city and county to each use about a third of that money to build new housing or rehab old places and provide other housing, help for the people who are hurting the most. That could lead to housing for thousands of families. Our sister organization in Louisville just announced that their mayor will donate $100 million of their American Rescue Plan money to housing solutions. That's the kind of rescue plan we need here in Columbus. The second thing we want is a plan. We want the city to require housing developers to make a priority of building more houses and apartments that cost a lot less than what we're seeing now. That's what they're doing in cities like New York, Austin, Atlanta, and Detroit. At the action, you heard Columbus City Council member Shayla Favor commit to work with us on this kind of plan. It would mean that families who work hard but can't afford almost $2,000 a month in rent would have a shot at a place that they could afford. Let's clap for and pause for their commitment to affordable housing. That's what we want. Bread rises. Next, Noel will come and continue with this campaign.
Thank you, Pastor. Now, we want to invite former State Senator Charleta Tavares to explain why our continued push for housing is so critical. Charleta.
Thank you very much, Noel, and thank you to the co-presidents of BREAD and all of the members. I thank you all for all of the work that you're doing. Noel and I met earlier this month and talked about the need for housing. And as we discussed it, housing is what we call a social determinant of health. What I like to say, it is vital, it is critical, it is a basic need. If we don't have housing, our residents don't have a place to store their food, they don't have a place to put their medications that they might need into a refrigerator. It is one of the basic needs of everyone: food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and a job. Our organization is a healthcare organization, and what we do know is that 20% of our outcomes, our health outcomes, are based on the care that we receive, the quality of care that we received. 80% of our health outcomes are determined by what we call social determinants of health: the kind of housing we live in or not, the food we're eating or not, the employment that we have or not, the clothing that we may have or not. All of those things, and transportation and more, are called social determinants. It is so critical that a person have a place to call home, whether they're an individual that is out on the land, like many of the patients that we see. Over 1,000 patients a year are homeless individuals within our community. I'm proud to say that we're trying to do our part. Even though housing isn't a primary issue for PrimaryOne Health, our community health outreach workers, or CHOWs, and our Healthcare for the Homeless program have assisted to date, at this year to date, 87 individuals find housing. That's tremendous, but it's not enough. And more people have to step up, including local, state, and federal government, to prioritize housing for the residents of our community. So as Noel and the staff of BREAD met with me, I shared with them that I pledged to work with you and our county commissioners, our city council members, and as the former chair of City Council's Housing Committee, that I pledged to work with you so that we can get housing as a priority. Just as your statement says, families first, housing now, we want to make sure that with BREAD does rise and is going to be raising roofs. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of today's action and presentation.
Thank you so much, Charleta. We appreciate that. Thank you, and we'll keep up the fight. We invited Franklin County Commissioner Boyce and Columbus City Council Member Favor to join us this evening. We have followed up, and we're not done. Please take a look at the screen and write down the phone numbers for their offices. Please give them a call tomorrow and let them know that we want them to work with us, to work with BREAD on our plans for more affordable housing. For people on the phone, those numbers are 614-645-7263. Again, 614-645-7263 and 614-525-5530. Again, 614-525-5530. In the coming months, we'll announce other ways that we can all work together to continue this housing push, because we're tired of people we know and love having to resort to living on the street or settling for unsafe housing. BREAD rises. Reverend Karl Stevens.
Thank you very much. Good evening, I'm Karl Stevens, and it's my honor to serve St. Stephen's Episcopal Church as parish priest. I am sure that no one here tonight wants to fear calling the police because we don't know how we or our loved ones will be treated by them. Nor do we want to have the talk with our children about how to behave if pulled over by the police. But that is the reality for many of our Black and brown brothers and sisters. We have to appreciate that reality And we have to appreciate that we all have different perspectives because of our life experiences. But when it comes to unjust treatment of anyone in our community, we as people of faith must stand together in solidarity to demand change. It has come to our attention that a good number of us here tonight were uncomfortable with our message about the state of policing during the Nehemiah action. I would first like to state what I believe most of us can agree on. We are all made in God's image, and we all have a right to feel safe in our neighborhoods and to trust that our police will serve and protect us, regardless of race, geography, or economic status. For the most part, we all seem to be in agreement with the solutions listed in your packet, and we all want to see a process of reconciliation. We want to see additional training that helps police speak up when they believe their colleagues are not acting in a safe or fair way. And we want to see agencies other than the police respond to specific emergencies involving people with severe mental illnesses. Where some of us seem not to be in agreement is on how we talk about the problem of policing. We know that there are some very excellent police officers who go out of their way to serve and protect all of Columbus, such as those volunteering with books and badges. We met such officers during our research, and I can tell you that they are as frustrated by the toxic culture in their department as we are. Many want change, but find that they can't bring that change about from the inside, and others have left the department because of its toxicity. We have to follow the facts. People in the Black community are more likely to have a negative experience with police in Columbus than people in white communities. These facts were reinforced during our house meetings when, over and over, the Black leadership of Bread reported on experiences of unfair police practices and expressed fear of the police. In addition, the data on stops and arrests by Columbus police also points to a double standard in Black versus white communities. All these facts add up to a deep-seated cultural problem in the police department that won't go away by weeding out a few police officers. It will require an intentional and long-term effort on all of our parts, together. The Columbus Division of Police reflects the majority white population of Greater Columbus, and we need to be honest that many white people, such as myself, were taught to be afraid of Black people. Taught by the deep-seated racial bias in our society that supports racist policies such as residential and school segregation, mass incarceration, and heavy-handed policing of Black communities. The fear that we grew up with and that many of our children are still being taught both comes from and reinforces housing segregation, redlining, and other disinvestment policies that plague Black communities. None of us created the racist policies that are used to justify over-policing of Black communities, but every white person has a responsibility to look deep into our souls and ask why we're uncomfortable when we hear a tough description of racially discriminatory policing. Earlier, Rabbi Kellner quoted Rabbi Abraham Heschel, who said, "Some are guilty, all are responsible." We are not looking to dismantle the police department. We are not saying that all police are guilty. What we are saying is that we are all responsible for what must be done so that everyone in Columbus feels safe, protected, and served. That is not the state of our current police department. I pray that we can count on you to stay in the fight as we stand unified behind solutions to change the toxic culture of policing in Columbus. I will now invite Brother James Wynn to give us a progress report on both reducing gun violence and improving policing in Columbus. Brother Wynn?
Yes, thank you, Reverend Stevens. Appreciate you sharing your truth there. During the House meetings this year, many of you shared that you hear gunshots regularly. Your homes have been shot at, and your family has suffered gun injuries. Others talked about being pulled over by police simply because of the color of your skin, and you were hesitant to call police in an emergency, knowing that they were not trained to handle incidents involving mental illness. We know that if violent crime were up for a vote tonight, it would most certainly win. While your stories were so important for us to hear, our board of directors voted to remove violent crime and police-related problems from being considered tonight. We felt we had to do this so that we stayed focused on the solutions we are already pressing for, so we won't get distracted. So let me give you some updates on our current campaigns. This past year, Bread got the city of Columbus to invest nearly $500,000 to partner with the National Network for Safe Communities, the NNSC. NNSC has worked with cities across the country to reduce gang violence and murders by as much as 40%. In the spring, NNSC conducted a study here in Columbus, concluding that nearly half of all murders was connected to approximately 18 known violent groups. The city listened to Bread and extended their contract with NNSC for the next year. Now, as a first step, the city hired 3 people to directly coordinate the initiative. We are optimistic that the initiative will launch before the end of this year and that 2022 will be a less deadly year. Bread rises. Now, one of the realities in cities, including Columbus, is a general lack of trust of police, especially by the Black and brown communities. Research has shown that lack of trust for police significantly undermines efforts to reduce violence. This past year, we proposed 3 specific ways the city could assist Columbus City Police to earn trust with the community. We propose a reconciliation process, a peer intervention training, and a non-police crisis response to mental health emergencies. Now, we have met twice with the new police chief, Elaine Bryant. She expressed a willingness to work with Bread. She had worked with a similar model in Detroit. She committed to research both the reconciliation process we proposed and the peer intervention training. Unfortunately, we have not been able to meet with the chief since the Department of Justice began their review of the police as requested by Mayor Ginther. We are working to get a meeting with the chief in January. Now, we have much better news regarding our third recommendation for a non-police crisis response team. We have been in regular contact with the fire department, who has taken the lead during the development and implementation of a pilot, the non-police response initiative. And we are cautiously optimistic as the pilot evolves, especially since Mayor Ginther at his press conference on last week indicated that $5 million will be used to expand this initiative from the new budget. Now, in the past 6 months, they reported that 40% of the 911 calls had been directed away from police, and there was a 63% reduction in overall calls to police. Bread rises. Now, while meeting with them, we also learned that there's now 4 social workers in the SPARK program. Now, the SPARK program is a specialized program assessing resource connectivity, which connects seniors to available services when they call 911. They only had 1 social worker when Bread challenged them to expand their services, and they now have 4. Bread rises. Now, what has been most clear over the past few months is that all roads lead to Mayor Ginther. It is vital we demand his attention and attendance in May. We have requested a meeting with him, but he needs to hear from all of you. So I urge you to contact him as Rabbi Kellner challenged us. We will continue to monitor the progress of this pilot and hope to have good news on all fronts by the Nehemiah action on May 10th of next year. Bread rises. This concludes the updates from our current campaigns. I would now like to call on Diane Peters to focus us on adopting a new problem to address this coming year. Diane?
Thank you, James. Thank you, Father Stevens. Thank you all for sharing your stories in house meetings this year. Since September, many of you have attended one of the 120 house meetings that happened across Franklin County. 1,000 of us attended those meetings. A few weeks ago, team members from your congregations reported on the concerns you shared, and we narrowed those down to 3. Tonight, as network members, we determine what Brad will tackle next. If you have not committed to be a network member, I would encourage you to do so tonight during your congregation's caucus time. After we vote tonight, we will have a responsibility to get others involved so that we can bring together thousands of people in order to win the solutions to the problems we vote on. Right now, 695 of us are network members. We need at least 750 networks members. With 750 of us bringing at least 3 people with us to the Nehemiah Action, we can get 3,000 people there. We can get 3,000 people there. Just imagine that. And we will have the power to win. As network members, we are the backbone of this organization. So we need to follow up with members of our congregations who aren't committed yet and give them the opportunity to take action. Remember, no matter how different our stories are or what focus areas we choose tonight, we can all work together to build power for justice. We will now have 3 testimonies about the top 3 problems raised in house meetings: neighborhood safety, mental health, and environmental injustice. Each of these testimonies is only one example of the types of stories shared in each category. Other examples are listed in your packet. For example, you'll notice that although a topic like the environment seems rather broad, we heard everyday experiences that are often overlooked, like high utilities bills, effects of extreme flooding and mold, our toxic air quality that affects people's health and their ability to breathe. We don't always talk about these problems, but you'll find that you relate to one of the examples listed. Keep that in mind as you prepare to vote for the next problem that we tackle. Pastor John will share a story about neighborhood safety. Gloria will share a story about mental health. And Diane will share a story about environmental injustice. Now, let's hear our first testimony from Pastor John.
Hi, I am Reverend John Allen Cox, pastor of Karl Road Christian Church. I'm wanting to talk today about neighborhood safety. The church is located in the Northland area, and we have noticed that some of our members in the area and part of the church have had some struggles with neighborhood safety. We had one woman shared a story that she doesn't feel safe walking in the neighborhood in the afternoons and early evenings anymore because of possible violence. We have one woman shared that she doesn't feel safe because she has heard stories of thefts of packages from porches and even stories of car thefts that have happened in our neighborhood. One woman shared that she doesn't shop in this area anymore for fear of being mugged. That same person shared that if she needs gas on the way home, that she would rather drive to Grandview Heights, 20 minutes away, and get gas there than go around the corner to get some. And that's just not limited to our neighborhood, but to a lot of neighborhoods around. My wife, in fact, had her wallet stolen at a Goodwill store in Dublin. It is a shame that people really can't feel safe in their own neighborhoods and in their homes. So I invite you to please vote to tackle neighborhood safety so that we can restore a sense of neighborliness to our neighborhoods.
Sorry for the delay. We seem to be experiencing some technical challenges. In the meantime, here we go.
Good evening. Tonight I will talk about mental health. As pervasive as it is, the stigma attached to it still makes it uncomfortable and difficult to personally share with others, let alone in a house meeting. But I did. I shared how the COVID pandemic had robbed me of normal well-being because places were closed and I was trapped in a state of isolation and not able to be active in my church community and other organizations. I learned to manage my adult ADD and OCD prior to COVID, but being isolated altered my lifestyle and my happiness. I also feel I was affected, maybe more than others, because I'm an elderly person, an only child. I've never married and I have no children. Both my parents are deceased and I have no relatives to rely on in Columbus. This isolation progressively turned into depression. At that point, I called on the medical field and my health insurance coverage, but only to find out that out-of-pocket treatment is very expensive, especially when you're on a retirement pension, Social Security, and a tight budget. One outpatient session costs $40 to $100, and a 5-day inpatient stay could cost almost $2,000. No one knows the personal problems experienced by others, like what was mentioned in our house meetings, the kids being bullied and abused and the effects this had on their mental health, some even leading to suicide, and those that were addicted and are addicted and turning to crime to buy their drugs. My biggest concern is the cost of my mental health treatment, which is not nearly as severe an illness as what others suffer. Right now, my faith has been sustaining me, but everyday living is just not the same with this illness. So I'm asking you tonight at this assembly, let's do something great and vote for mental illness so we can uplift our community and make Columbus a better place to live.
Is Diane Jackson, and I am a member of Rhema Christian Center. In April of 2018, I moved back to Columbus to live with my mother as her primary caregiver. Shortly after moving in, I noticed how in the basement, water would gush up under my feet after a heavy rain and stream down from the top of the north basement wall, and a distinct moldy smell always lingered in the air. My mom was 83 years of age, and when I tried to talk to her about it, she would say, "It's not that bad." She had gotten used to it, but I knew that these conditions could be dangerous. Rates of precipitation have gone up over the past 60 years in Ohio, so this problem wasn't going to go away on its own. Sure enough, 4 months later, I began to have symptoms. Watery eyes, congested and runny nose, itching, even chest tightness every now and then. For the first time ever, I began experiencing vertigo. And if anyone has ever had vertigo, you know how completely debilitating that condition can be. My mom experienced many of the same symptoms and had even more severe vertigo attacks, each one worse than the one before. I remember one time she couldn't hold her head up without dry heaving. I didn't know what else to do but to get into bed with her. and hold her and pray with her. It was the grace of God. I'm sorry, it was only by the grace of God we made it through that episode. I strongly believed that our symptoms had something to do with the mold in the basement. So I refused to even allow my mom to go down there to use her stationary bike or treadmill. Our own home was making us sick. In November of 2020, I was able to convince my mom that we needed to hire contractors to address the problem. The 3-week project required asbestos abatement, mold remediation, and sump pump remediation. None of this work was covered by my mom's home warranty service plan or her home insurance, and it was costly. I praise God that my mom and I were able to start 2021 with a water-free and mold-free basement. However, this experience has me concerned about others in our community who find themselves living in wet, moldy, and toxic environments that, unknown to them, are affecting their physical health. As we know, the most vulnerable in our community are the most impacted by environment-related problems. That's why I hope you join me in voting for environmental injustice so that hidden problems like mold, flooding, heat, and toxic air are finally addressed in Columbus. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to hear from Matt Burns explaining the Congregational Caucuses. Hi, Matt.
Hello, all. How are you? All right. Yes, so we're about to begin the actual voting process. So we've heard some powerful testimonies, some exciting updates tonight. Now, in just a couple of minutes, we're all going to go into our caucuses so that each congregation can go over some important items. So there's 4 things that we'll be gathering in these caucuses that will start here shortly. First is the number of people here tonight from your congregation. The second is the number of network members here tonight from your congregation. The third is the number of votes, and we'll talk about that shortly for each of the problem categories. And fourth and last, we want to get a sense of the number of people who will be attending the December 6th research kickoff. The research kickoff is where you'll learn about Fred's research process, gives you an opportunity to get involved in some of the committees you've heard about from tonight, and to represent your congregation on the new problem area that we're about to vote on. So first, let's talk about voting. Each network member that's here tonight gets 1 vote. If you've not yet committed to being a network member, you can make that happen tonight in your caucus. We'll expect that you'll still follow through on the commitments that we ask for the network members. If you're not ready to commit, we'd ask that you refrain from voting. So a reminder, there's 3 categories to vote on tonight: neighborhood safety, mental health, and environmental injustice. And recall some of the powerful witness that we just heard. I mean, that can include high utility bills, flooding, toxic air, etc. So how's this going to work? Well, two key parts. First, we take the vote, and then secondly, we submit the vote. So in taking the vote, we'll start these caucuses, and probably the best way to explain this is to use an example. Let's just say in your caucus, you have 30 network members present. That would mean that you have 30 total votes, including your own. So how do you cast your votes? That's what you decide in the caucus as a group. You can spread your votes across all 3 categories. Now in my example, there's 30 network members, so you can spread those 30 votes across all 3, but you still have a total of 30 votes. Or you can be creative in your caucus. You can say, we want to put all of our votes in just 1 category. So in the example that we were sharing here, that would be 30 votes in just one category. That's all up to you, and it's all done in your caucus that will start shortly. So we take the vote, step one, and then step two is submit the vote. So this is information more for the caucus leaders, but all of you who are joining the caucus, be kind to your caucus leader and help them. Caucus leaders, you'll need to use the tally form that was provided to submit the votes from your congregation for us to count tonight. So you do that using the Google form link that was sent to you for your congregation. So remember, in our example, 30 network members, right? So how many votes are going to be shown on the tally form? Yes, you've got it, 30 votes. Now, caucus leaders, you must submit the Google form link that was sent for the votes to be counted. And if you're having problems with this or with the form, just contact your organizer or come back to the main room to ask questions. Other things that we can cover in our caucuses, those are the two key ones, is taking the vote, submitting the vote, getting those 4 tallies of information. It's a great time to just share key updates about how your congregation's doing, key dates that are coming up. So feel free to do that, but most importantly, take the vote and submit the vote. Then at 8:19, that's when we're going to return back to the main session, the main meeting. That's when we'll have our election of officers at 8:19. The good news, when you do go into your breakout room, you'll be sending, we'll send time signals or little warnings. So you'll see kind of the clock running down. So you'll know when you need to step up the pace to get these first 2 key items done. So in a minute, Cora is going to be opening up the breakout rooms, and you should see a join breakout room button that will be popping up. But a very, very important point in coming back to the main meeting, do choose leave breakout room. Do not choose to leave the meeting. By leaving the breakout room, you come back to the larger group that we're in right now. And if you accidentally leave the meeting, well, then your screen will go blank and you'll lose all of us. So please stay in the meeting. Well, we will get ready to start shortly. The program will resume at 8:19. Because some of the congregations are larger, we'll make sure that all of your votes are turned in by 8:23. So if we're ready, Cora will be inviting you to the breakout rooms. Just select join the breakout room and then join us back at 8:19.
All right. If anyone is currently on here without a name of your congregation next to you, please add that. Lauren's going to put up the instructions on how to do that. That would help me greatly in helping get you assigned, as well as if you are on the phone, if I'm going to be calling out your name and you can, or calling out the last 4 digits of your number, you could then tell me your name. So I have 4830. You could let me know your name and congregation. And if not, it might be easier if you're on the phone, if you could tell me, if you could unmute and tell me your name and what number you have.
3272114 Rama Christian Center.
And now we'll see what these crazy niggas is going to say.
6786 Center.
1 second. For St. Thomas More Newman Center, what was that number again?
Yeah, 6786.
Maggie Burns
Baptist Church, Good Shepherd Baptist Church, 4351 Tina Pryor.
Maggie Burns, Rama Christian Center.
Let's see, 4351. I'm not seeing.
The energy drains just a little bit from your feet, and I'm just going to point it out now because you have another dance coming up, but it was fantastic.
Cora, do people have the ability to pick their own?
Yes, so anyone who is going to look at the bottom of your screen at the breakout option, it should give you an option to click that and find your congregation. And thank you to those who put it in the chat. That also is helpful.
Catherine Barkhurst, the St. Thomas More Newman Center, and phone number ends in 1256.
All right, thank you all for your patience. Rob, if you don't mind doing the phone numbers, I can get these other people. You can change them.
Walter Thomas.
What phone number?
In 3778. St. Thomas Parish.
Ricardo Smith.
Hang on.
Sorry.
St. Thomas. Okay. Who is that?